Gonzaga accepted an invitation to become a full share member of the Pac-12 for about 5 minutes before the report was quickly proven false. However, we wonder if it could have just been a little premature.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, it was an eventful couple of days for the Pac-12 Conference. We're going to break it all down. We're going to break down the brief report we got that Gonzaga had already accepted an invitation to the Pac-12. We're going to talk about why that came out, what the actual situation is as updated as we can get here on Wednesday afternoon. We're also going to talk about whether the Pac-12 could potentially look to build a basketball-centric power conference, which they have the ability to do if they make some of the correct moves over the next couple of weeks or months. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons for Gonzaga joining the Pac-12 as it currently stands, as well as the unknown factors and what those might need to look like for Gonzaga to make the decision to join the Pac-12 conference. Jam-packed episode. I know some of you who are listening to the show probably were not caught up in all of the drama that has taken place over the last 2 days and continues here into Wednesday afternoon. So I will do my best to fill you all in on what has been going on. But the big relevant Gonzaga portion of this drama happened on Monday, right around noon. I think it was like just before noon on Monday. A tweet from Brett McMurphy of the Action Network. Brett is a very connected college sports insider, one of the few college sports insiders that I have traditionally kind of held up to the standard of, hey, if he's reporting it, it's pretty much true. I think it's important, and we're not going to dig all the way into media literacy right now, but I think it's important to kind of have certain people that you trust, certain people where you're like, this person tweeted it, but I don't know how valid that is. I'm going to wait to see if other sources have reported it or not. Brett was somebody who was kind of in the camp of, hey, if they're reporting it, it's probably pretty true, which is why I believed it when he tweeted just before noon on Monday that Gonzaga had accepted an invitation to the Pac-12 as a full share member and would be starting in the Pac-12 in 2026. This is what Brett reported on Monday. A full share implies that Gonzaga was offered the same amount of money as a football school would be offered to join the conference. This report came out shortly after we had heard earlier on the day on Monday that the Pac-12 had not been successful in their pursuit of multiple schools from the American Athletic Conference, including Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, and Tulsa, who had all opted to stay, or excuse me, not Tulsa, UT San Antonio. All four of those schools said, we are staying in the American Athletic Conference. We are not leaving. We're locked in to this conference. So shortly after that we heard this report. So the timing seemed valid. The Pac-12 would pivot away from those schools and add a marquee basketball brand. All of this looked legitimate, but very quickly it was refuted. Multiple highly regarded reporters, some within the Gonzaga space, some who are just national college basketball reporters, others who are Pac-12 reporters. John Canzano shot it down, said, hey, this is not true. John Rothstein shot it down, said, contrary to other reports, this has not happened. And then the most important one came from Jim Meehan of the Spokesman Review, fantastic reporter over there, who got a quote from Chris Standiford, the athletic director at Gonzaga, that simply said, that is not accurate reporting. So it was, again, swiftly indicated, hey, this is not true. Interestingly enough, in the updated article from Action Network, the company Action Network said, we are standing by our reporting. I don't know how at this point, as we record this 48 hours later, it's very clear that Brett's reporting that this had been offered and accepted is not true. It doesn't mean it won't be true. For the record, it could be true. It could be true tomorrow. or later today even. It could be true in January or in April next year or a year from now, 2 years from now. Probably not that long. If it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen in the next calendar year-ish, but it's not true right now. And it's odd that they are so adamant of saying we're standing by our reporting. Your reporting was incorrect. Again, it doesn't mean it won't be correct someday, but at the time when it was reported, there is now no longer a debate on whether that report was accurate or not. It was not accurate. And to not acknowledge that is very odd to me. I had some personal conversations with some reporters with, offline on Twitter DMs and various other places, and was found out that there's some frustration at that report coming out because of, like, not only is it not true, like if it had been true that Gonzaga had been offered a full scholarship had been offered a full spot in the conference, a full share, and had just not accepted it yet, that would just look like, oh, maybe we just jumped the gun a little bit. But there hasn't even been an offer made. To report that an offer had been made and had been accepted when neither of those things are true is pretty egregious and surprising to see that happen from somebody who was a pretty well-regarded source within the industry for college sports news. So that was a bit of a surprise to see that happen on Monday. Some of the things that happened, we've seen some fallout from this. Again, Canzano tweeted like he was absolutely stunned to see this report come out because he knew that it was not true. But there was a great tweet from ESPN's Kyle Bonagira, and I'm going to read it here because I think it kind of highlights where we're at right now, again, with stuff happening very quickly in this space. His tweet says, conversations with Gonzaga started when the AAC schools were still in play. Without them, the revenue projections are less, which impacts what a hypothetical deal looks like with Gonzaga. Football likely needs to be dealt with before basketball schools truly enter. That, to me, is the kicker right now. The Pac-12, after all of this happened, and we'll get into more of what happened, the Pac-12 has added a school, Utah State, the Utah State Aggies, been to the NCAA tournament 2 of the last 3 years, I think 4 of the last 5, something like that, are about to have their third new coach in the last 3 years. Ryan Odom went to VCU. Danny Sprinkle took over, led them to the NCAA tournament. Now he's at Washington. This Utah State team is a quality addition to the Pac-12 on the men's basketball side. And we'll talk more about that later in the show. But that's the only move that has been made right now. And it makes sense to me that Gonzaga is not going to jump to the Pac-12 when they now find out that Memphis, who would have been a really nice addition for Gonzaga specifically, is not in the mix. South Florida, Tulane, UT San Antonio, those schools don't move the needle as much on a men's basketball perspective, but Memphis would have, and not having them in the mix is tough. It's tough. I don't think the Zags turned down a full share from the Pac-12. We'll talk more about that, but if that ends up truly being offered to Gonzaga, I doubt they turn it down. I also don't know that Gonzaga is rushing to join the Pac-12 without a full share. And I have a hard time seeing Washington State and Oregon State and the other schools in the Pac-12 who have voting power saying, yeah, give Gonzaga the same amount of money to build their basketball program when they don't have to split that money with football. Obviously, Gonzaga would split the money around with women's basketball and baseball and the soccer programs and various other places, just like those other programs do. But that money generally is used for football. And so Gonzaga getting a full share is not, I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think Gonzaga's monetary value to the conference is significant, but I can understand why teams in the league aren't super gung-ho about giving Gonzaga or any non-football school the same amount of money that a football school would get. But again, if Pac-12 is not going to offer Gonzaga a full share. We don't know what full shares look like in the conference right now, but it wasn't enough to convince Memphis to leave a mid-major conference. If Memphis won't leave for a full share in the Pac-12, why would Gonzaga leave for not a full share? I think that's the question that we have right now. And beyond that, the timing is something to keep an eye on, because right now, the latest updates is there's now a lawsuit between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West centering around a poaching fee put into the contracts for the Mountain West schools. We're not going to dig all the way into this because it's not directly relevant to Gonzaga, but what it means is that the Pac-12 and the Mountain West are in a little bit of a standstill, specifically regarding UNLV. UNLV plans to recommit to staying in the Mountain West. In fact, reportedly they did. They said, we are committing to staying in the Mountain West, assuming every school in the Mountain West stays put. If these schools just band together and lock in and make a few additions and kind of rebuild that way, we're in, we're good, we're staying. And then after that is when Utah State bailed and went to the Pac-12. And now UNLV says our agreement, our deal to stay in this conference, no longer valid because Utah State is not staying. So now the Pac-12 is suing the Mountain West over these poaching fees. We'll see how long this litigation lasts. Both sides are out with their PR statements. It's a little messy right now. It seems like there's some animosity on both sides there. Really, all it means for Gonzaga is that the brakes are pumped. The Pac-12 is not going to try to prioritize negotiating a deal with Gonzaga when they don't know if they're going to be able to get UNLV, when they don't know what's going to happen with Nevada or New Mexico or some of these other schools. There's no real reason for the Pac-12 to prioritize adding Gonzaga right now. And there's certainly no reason for Gonzaga to jump into a situation as murky as the current Pac-12. So I think that things are just paused. May not be a long pause. It may end up being a significantly long pause. I have no idea. But there's not really any momentum. Despite 2 days ago hearing a report about this, there's not really any momentum because the priority for the Pac-12 is dealing with this Mountain West lawsuit and adding enough football schools to be FBS eligible, which means at least one more. They probably want to get to 9 or 10 before they start to focus on the basketball side of things. But with the American Athletic Conference tightening up and not really presenting as many options to the Pac-12 with this lawsuit going on, the Pac-12 just doesn't have as many options as they'd hoped they would. And it leads us to wonder if the league could do what I would love to see them do, and many others think could be a possibility, which is just focus on building a really good basketball conference. We're going to discuss what that could look like and how Gonzaga could be involved coming up in just a second. Hey, Zag fans, have you heard about ROY? It stands for Return on You, and it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. NIL has changed the game for athletes. ROY changes the NIL game for fans. Why should you use ROY? You get exclusive content access. When fans contribute to a successful campaign, they receive access to exclusive content from the athlete, such as their announcement decision, behind-the-scenes footage, and other personal reflections. Download ROY now for iOS, or Android, and enter referral code enter referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROY. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Folks, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help hire the right professionals for your team faster, and they do it for free. And LinkedIn is not just another generic job board. They help hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. And in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, folks, you're not looking in the right place. On LinkedIn, over 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also knows the 2.5 million small businesses who use their site are often wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to prioritize hiring. So they're constantly finding ways to make that process even easier, including launching a feature that helps you write your own job descriptions. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And we're still talking about the Pac-12 and the last crazy couple days for the conference. We're going to close out the show talking about the pros and cons for the Pac-12, for Gonzaga joining the Pac-12 as we know them currently. So we'll have pros, we'll have cons, and then we'll have the unknowns. What are the things that we don't know right now that we would need to know in order to determine whether this is the correct move for the Gonzaga Bulldogs? Before we do that, I want to talk about the concept that the Pac-12 could prioritize men's basketball as a super league rather than focusing on football. And it's not that they wouldn't focus on football. Football makes all the money. 85% of money in college space goes to football. That's a known fact. And I think it's pretty clear that, especially right now, as the conference is needing to get to at least 8 schools in order to be FBS eligible in 2026, the priority is getting at least one more football program into the conference so that they know they're set in that space. But already, With the 7 schools currently in the Pac-12, with no other additions, which won't be the case, but even as they are currently constructed, this is a good basketball conference. 5 of the 7 teams in the Pac-12 made the NCAA tournament last year. 4 of those 5 were out of the Mountain West Conference: San Diego State, Colorado State, Boise State, and Utah State. Those 4 were all in the Mountain West last year. Washington State, of course, was the lone Pac-12 school. They will be in the WCC for at least the next season, potentially the next 2 seasons. But those 5 teams all made the NCAA tournament last year. The only 2 that are currently in the Pac-12 that did not are Fresno State and Oregon State. Oregon State has not been good on the football side of things for a while. Fresno State, it's been a while for them as well. I think it's just one NCAA tournament appearance since 2013. Neither of them are really significant contributors in the basketball side of things, but San Diego State is obviously a power, one of the top non-power basketball programs in the country alongside Gonzaga. This is a very, very good program in the national championship game a few years ago, consistently in the NCAA tournament, frequently in the top 25. Colorado State and Boise State and Utah State have all been regular members of the NCAA tournament as well. And yes, I know the Mountain West doesn't have a lot of success advancing in the NCAA tournament. That's been a big knock on that conference for a very long time. San Diego State really kind of put that narrative aside with their run all the way to the national championship game. But this is a pretty persistent narrative around the Mountain West. So even though these teams are now joining the Pac-12, that is still the narrative of like, okay, they can get teams in the tournament. A lot of those teams make the tournament as an 8 seed, 9 seed, or a play-in 11 seed, and they don't have a lot of success. Leon Rice is still looking for his first NCAA tournament victory. This is an area that we haven't seen a lot of teams succeed advancing in the tournament, but they're good at making the tournament. And again, the Pac-12 needs at least one more member to get to 8 FBS schools. UNLV is the big target right now, but the lawsuit is the factor right there. If it's not UNLV, but the Pac-12 feels like they can continue to poach out of the Mountain West, maybe they go for New Mexico or Nevada. Both those teams made the NCAA tournament last year as well, so they would be quality additions from a men's basketball perspective, although frankly, neither would be good additions on the football side of things. That is why they have not been poached by the Pac-12 yet. We also know the Pac-12 is considering schools like Texas State, Bobcats, UTEP, Texas El Paso. Maybe they even look at an FCS school like North Dakota State as a football-only member. Speaking of football-only members, this rumor really blew my mind. Pac-12 is considering UConn as a football-only member. UConn would keep the rest of their sports in the Big East as they currently are, but instead of being independent on the football side of things, they would be in the Big 12, or excuse me, the Big 12, the Pac-12. Does that make sense? I don't know. UConn's not a good football team, and playing across the country for all of your games seems like maybe not the best plan. But again, UConn's currently independent. The Pac-12 needs a team. That alone makes this a logical potential addition. Obviously, UConn not bringing their basketball program is pretty devastating if you're Gonzaga and just a basketball fan in general. But it could make sense for the conference to at least get that 8th necessary football team into the league. So what if the conference decided to prioritize basketball? Let's talk about what that could look like. There's 4 non-football schools that I think reasonably could be considered as additions for the Pac-12 conference. Gonzaga is, of course, one of them, and alongside St. Mary's. We know the Pac-12 has had preliminary discussions about St. Mary's. That is a long ways away from actually making an invitation and putting together an offer, all that stuff. St. Mary's is a small school. It's a non-accredited university, or it's a non-accredited school. It's a college. Their resources are pretty limited. Their facilities are probably below standard for the rest of the schools in the Pac-12. And their success in sports outside of men's basketball is not exactly great. But Randy Bennett has this program in really good shape on the men's basketball side. And Gonzaga and St. Mary's, I don't think they're a package deal by any stretch, but they could be. They could be. And if the Pac-12 feels they could add Gonzaga and St. Mary's, I think they would strongly consider doing that. The other school that makes sense here is Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is kind of the opposite of St. Mary's in the sense that they have endless amounts of money, endless amounts of resources. We've seen them put together a very successful baseball team in a short amount of time. Their men's basketball program is obviously very successful. This is a team that I know a lot of people are not a big fan of Grand Canyon institutionally, their for-profit model, various other things about the conference. Certainly the old Pac-12 would have very much not made this consideration because of just the institution not being up to their standard. But the new Pac-12, that can't be a priority for them. It just can't. It already clearly is not, and it won't continue to be. Grand Canyon is a sleeping giant in terms of the amount of money and resources that they have, and the Pac-12 would be wise to add them into this conference, especially if they're wanting to prioritize basketball. The last edition here is a bit of a wild card, but I wonder strongly if the Pac-12 will consider trying to go after Wichita State. Obviously, geographically, they're not as big of a fit, but they're not a terrible fit. It's not UConn. They're not quite that, or even South Florida or some of the other schools that were being in consideration. Wichita State would be on an island in this scenario because they're not adding Memphis and Tulane and those other schools. But Wichita State is not a good fit in the American Athletic Conference. They were in the Missouri Valley forever. In 2019, they moved to the AAC, and it's not a good fit for them. The AAC prioritizes football. Wichita State doesn't have football. They haven't been able to really make the jump basketball-wise in that conference. It's a bit of a risk, but this is a program that has a lot of history and success on the basketball court. And I think joining the Pac-12 as a basketball-only member, and by which I mean they would join in every sport, they just don't have football. I think Wichita State, alongside Grand Canyon, St. Mary's, Gonzaga, you're building yourself a pretty dang good basketball conference if they're able to do that. If you add those 4 schools and you don't make any other additions, which we know they will because they need to get at least one more football school in the building. But with those schools, plus the ones already in the conference, you have 8 teams who made the NCAA tournament last year, 8 of them. Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Diego State, Boise State, Colorado State, Grand Canyon, Washington State, Utah State. All of those teams made the NCAA tournament last year. And obviously, 1 year of NCAA tournament is not the perfect measurement for how good a basketball program is. Washington State, for example, hadn't made it since 2008, probably won't make it this year, although we'll see what that looks like. But regardless, 8 teams from last, again, you might say, well, 2 or 3 of those teams, it doesn't really count. Okay, let's say it's 5 or 6 teams that we feel consistently compete for a spot in the NCAA tournament. How many teams in WCC consistently do? Just Gonzaga and St. Mary's. They're out the door in this conference. You know, I mean, I think you're if you're still comparing the Pac-12 and the WCC, and again, we'll talk about that more in the third segment. This is a better basketball conference. There's not a debate about that. The only teams that are in this fictional 11-team conference that didn't make the tournament last year, Oregon State and Fresno State, as we already talked about, Wichita State, who didn't make it last year. And if you're talking about adding New Mexico and Nevada, now you have 10 teams that made the tournament last year. And if you get UNLV, they won 20 games. They didn't make the tournament, but they won 20 games last year. I think they're going to make the tournament this year, too. They got some young guys on that team. I think they're going to be good. So even if you're adding UConn football or Texas State or UTEP, yeah, maybe UConn doesn't move the needle for basketball at all because they're not coming. But Texas State, sure, not a good basketball team. UTEP, not a good basketball team. Yeah, there's some teams that they could add that would drag down the bottom of the Pac-12. But it's not going to be on the level of Pacific and Portland and Pepperdine and those teams like that. So this is just not a situation where the Pac-12 top to bottom would be much stronger in this situation, and even currently is stronger than the depth in the WCC. I don't know how likely it is for the Pac-12 to really kind of just lean in heavily to creating a basketball league, but they're running out of options on the football side. And I don't see this as being a particularly bad idea. They don't have to spend as much money to add the schools that don't have football potentially. It's a way to woo Gonzaga by saying, hey, we're also going to add these schools and we're going to build a conference that's, going to put 4, 5, 6 teams potentially in the NCAA tournament year in and year out. I think that might be appealing enough to add the Zags. But let's talk about that, because it sounds like an offer to Gonzaga is probably coming. Again, maybe next month, maybe next year. I'm not sure, but I think it's probably going to happen. Should the Zags take it? That's the question. And well, it depends. We're going to discuss the pros. We're going to discuss the cons. We're going to discuss the unknowns. All that coming up in just a second. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And what better spot to spend that $5 than on Gonzaga plus 2,000 odds right now to win that 2025 national championship? That is well worth the $5 investment and the $200 in bonus bets. Again, guaranteed, win or lose. So go to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, closing out the show, continuing our conversation about the Pac-12 and the Gonzaga Bulldogs, still reeling from about 48 hours ago when the Zags were reportedly joining the Pac-12 as full share members, a report that lasted about 5 minutes until it was quickly and swiftly refuted by many other media outlets. Regardless, we do feel like this is eventually coming. The Pac-12 will probably send an invitation to Gonzaga at some point. And the question becomes whether Gonzaga should accept that invitation. We'll talk about the pros and the cons based on what we currently know about the conference. Again, this could change rapidly. But based on what we currently know, here are the pros for the Zags joining the Pac-12 Conference. It is a deeper basketball league than the WCC, even as currently constructed. San Diego State, Boise State, Colorado State, Utah State, Washington State. If that's your top five, that is a much better top five than the WCC sans Gonzaga. WCC top five outside of Gonzaga would be St. Mary's, San Francisco, Santa Clara, LMU, if we're not counting WSU since they're in the Pac-12 now. Your top five, maybe Portland, Pepperdine. Like, I'm not sure who fills that last spot there. Not a great top five. And the depth outside of that is significantly better in the Pac-12. Again, folks, you know I'm a WCC fan. If you're a longtime listener to the show, I love the WCC. The top of this note sheet that I'm working off of says WCC Wednesday on it. Might have to move away from that branding on the show if they get out of the WCC. But that doesn't mean the Pac-12 is not just better as currently constructed. Other pros, really easy to develop regional rivalries. San Diego State probably becomes Gonzaga's top rival. Maybe Washington State. Both of them, I think, are going to be huge, big-time, year-in, year-out rivalries for Gonzaga. San Diego State already has that history with Gonzaga. They beat them last year. They beat them at the Kennel a decade plus ago. They've had success in the NCAA tournament. They have a rabid fan base. That is already becoming a rivalry. Washington State is already there. I think Boise State could develop into a rivalry between the two sides as well. And then the locations that Gonzaga fans would get to travel to, or that Gonzaga fans might live in those areas and get to now see their team. I think that's a significant benefit as well. It's not that they don't have that in the WCC. They play in the Bay Area. They play in the LA area. They play in the San Diego area, of course. Like, they have Portland. Like, they have really good markets in the WCC. But if you're looking at just the current Pac-12 as it is right now, you would have road games in San Diego, of course, against the Aztecs. You'd have road games in Boise. Lots of Gonzaga fans in Boise. Road games in Fort Collins, which is not too far outside of Denver. Road games in Pullman, of course, and Corvallis. Not exactly Portland, but still, for Portland area Zag fans, a place to go see their team that's not too far away and also holds quite a bit more people than the Chiles Center does at UP. You also have Fresno. Again, it's a little farther out than the Bay Area teams currently are for Gonzaga, but still, for fans in that area, they have an opportunity to see the team. And then you have Logan, Utah. Not exactly the most appealing place, but again, not far from Salt Lake City. And obviously, Gonzaga fans are many fans who are in the area were used to being able to see the Zags at Provo against BYU. Now they'd get that opportunity in Logan against the Utah State Aggies. The Pac-12's reputation right now is a little bit questionable, but I think it's still going to be viewed as a quote-unquote better league than the WCC. I think could be some debate about that, but the Pac-12, even if it's just the new look Mountain West, is still going to probably have a better reputation. I don't think that Gonzaga is making this decision based on what keyboard warriors on the internet are saying about Gonzaga, but I do think that people will view Gonzaga differently if they're dominating this conference as opposed to dominating the WCC, mostly because people were just unaware of any of the teams in the WCC, whereas at least in the Pac-12, they'll have that awareness. The cons for Gonzaga joining the Pac-12, again, from what we currently know, the Zags are the kings in the WCC. They dominate this conference. They have a higher rev share. They have they get more of the units from the NCAA tournament. They have the double bye to get all the way to the semifinals of the WCC conference tournament. They would not get those benefits in the Pac-12. They wouldn't be a priority because they would be the best basketball brand in a conference that cares about football. Football's still going to be the king. Even if the Pac-12 does what I mentioned and builds a basketball super conference and adds multiple non-football schools to the league, there's still going to be a football conference. They're still going to care about they're still going to prioritize moves around football. And Gonzaga would be joining a league where they are not the priority. I'm not saying they have to be the priority in any league that they join, but it is a con of joining the Pac-12 is that you're giving that up. There's also no guarantee that the Pac-12 has more long-term stability than the WCC. We see that point a lot. There's a lot of people who think that Zags have to join the Pac-12 because all the mid-major conferences are about to fall apart, and it's just kind of this doomsday panic that we see from a lot of folks of like, oh, they want to break off and the WCC is going to cease to exist and everybody who's not in a power conference is just screwed. I don't think that that's true. I think that is an alarmist way to think about things. And I also think that makes the assumption that the Pac-12 is somehow safe from that. I don't see any reason why we should assume that at this point. The Pac-12 does not have a guaranteed autonomous 5 status. They're not guaranteed to kind of get back to that power conference level. If they build an FBS conference and they get a guaranteed bid into the 12-team college football playoff, that helps. I know it doesn't seem like that moves the needle in basketball, but it does help in terms of just the reputation of the league and the likelihood of the Pac-12 not kind of succumbing to any sort of falling apart or break off with the NCAA if that's something people are concerned about. I think that concern is overblown in general, and I also think that trusting the Pac-12 to be safe from that is a little bit of foolish at this point. We just don't know a whole lot about how the Pac-12 is going to be perceived. You also lose the fit of being in a conference with similar institutions. At this point, conference realignment is so inevitable that I think it's hard to have that be too high of a concern. I know it's something that matters to a lot of people, and I think it's justified, and it's sad to see so many conferences and programs kind of abandoning that area of why these conferences were constructed the way they were in the first place. But it is a con. You're losing that. You're leaving for schools that are not similar to you institutionally, in terms of your religious affiliation, your size, all that stuff goes out the window if you join the Pac-12. You also lose your rivalry with St. Mary's if they don't come along. Again, Gonzaga could, of course, play St. Mary's in the non-conference if they weren't in the same conference, but it would be a bummer to see that go away if they don't get added. And then the unknowns. Who else gets added? That's the biggest one. If the Pac-12 also adds UNLV, St. Mary's, Grand Canyon, Wichita State, and New Mexico, boom, heck yeah, you're in, no-brainer, tons of great basketball programs in that league. If the Pac-12 adds UConn football, Texas State, and UTEP, suddenly it's not quite as appealing for the Zags to potentially join the Pac-12. So that is an area where who else is coming into the league definitely matters for Gonzaga at this point. And then, of course, what does the financial picture look like? A full share, if Gonzaga gets offered that, probably a yes. But again, we don't know what a full share looks like. If a full share wasn't enough for Memphis, is a full share enough for Gonzaga? Is a partial share enough for Gonzaga? Probably not. Those are the questions that we don't have answers to. And so we can't really, that's a huge hinge. The pros and cons that we just laid out are important and are going to be discussed. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about how much money the Pac-12 is offering Gonzaga year in and year out. And as long as we don't know that, we just can't make a fully informed decision on whether this is a good move for Gonzaga at this point. And then, of course, the last part of it is if Gonzaga feels the Big 12 or the Big East are options at all. There was a report, I believe it was from Kyle Bonagira, who we talked about earlier in the show, that Gonzaga had gone back to the Big 12 and kind of re-brought it up as like, hey, is this an option for us at all before we make any decisions on this side? I don't know the truth to that. I don't know whether that conversation happened, how it went, anything like that. But if Gonzaga doesn't feel the Big 12 or the Big East are super likely options at this point, and the Pac-12 does come calling with legitimate offers, I think they might take it. I think that, again, it depends on some of the other factors that we don't know right now. But I do think that the Big 12 doesn't feel like they're making any moves swiftly at this point because they've added so much lately. The Big East is kind of waiting to see what happens with UConn, and everybody's waiting to see what happens with the ACC. So I just don't see the Big 12 or the Big East as likely in general, but certainly not likely in the next calendar year. And that means that the Zags will have to make a decision about joining the Pac-12 or passing on the Pac-12 and hoping that an addition comes from those other schools or those other conferences. So that's kind of where it's at right now. And again, as I record this right now, things will change. Things are going to continue to change. We'll continue to talk about this here on Locked On Zags as we see the Pac-12 continue to make additions. We'll talk about what it means for their pursuit of Gonzaga, how it changes those pros and cons, all that stuff. But for right now, that is going to wrap it up for me today. Thank you so much to those of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. We'll continue to keep you up to date on conference realignment. We're also going to start our season preview series next week, talking about every player on the roster, their history, their best and worst case scenarios for this upcoming season, as well as their future at Gonzaga. All that coming up starting next week. Thanks again, folks, for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And as always, go Zags.